and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. A senior North Korean diplomat has addressed the UN General Assembly and insisted that the regime will never give up its nuclear program. This was the first time since 2018 that a high-ranking North Korean official has spoken from the assembly podium. Government system disruptions continue in South Korea, with many services still offline, following a fire at a key national data center last week. The government has been scrambling to restore services, but the recovery is expected to take longer than expected, with authorities now saying it could take about a month. President Lee Jae-myung will sit down for talks with Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba in Busan. This will be Ishiba's first and the last visit as Prime Minister, as he pledged to step down after less than a year in the role following election losses. We begin this morning with government system disruptions in South Korea. Following a fire at the nation's data center last Friday, some key functions such as postal and financial services are back online, but the overall recovery rate remains at around 13%. Our Park Hyo-bin starts us off.
After Friday's fire at the National Information Resources Service in Daejeon, the government is making all-out efforts to bring disrupted services back online. Authorities say public safety and property-related systems remain the top priority. Services such as those issuing resident registration certificates through the government.kr portal were brought back online on Monday. Korea Post also said fresh food parcel counters would reopen from Tuesday, following the restoration of postal and financial services ahead of the Chuseok holiday rush. However, South Korea is still grappling with the fallout. As of 8 a.m. Tuesday, only 85 of 647 disrupted government services had been restored, a recovery rate of about 13%.
I got my resident registration and family relationship certificate, but the main reason I came was for a fixed date stamp, and that service still isn't working.
Interior Minister Yoon Ho-jung apologized to the public on Monday, pledging swift alternatives.
The government is focusing all resources on restoring critical services as quickly as possible. However, 96 systems from the destroyed data hall cannot be immediately restarted, so we are transferring them to the Daegu Center's cloud system to secure alternatives as fast as possible.
The Ministry of the Interior and Safety estimates it will take at least 4 weeks to fully restore the 96 systems that were destroyed by the fire, as it relocates the data to its Daegu backup center. Services that provide disaster information, including the National Disaster and Safety Portal, have no alternatives, making user inconvenience unavoidable. Internal government networks like Onnara Cloud, used for daily administrative tasks, were also lost in the blaze, forcing some offices to rely on handwritten documents and worsening on-site confusion. The government also announced plans to disclose the full list and classification of all 647 systems affected by the fire.
We deeply apologize once again to the public. It is expected to take about 2 weeks to prepare the resources and another 2 weeks to set up the systems, but we aim to accelerate the process as much as possible with cooperation from firms already housed at the Daegu Center.
With prolonged disruptions inevitable, authorities are providing relief measures. September property tax payment deadlines have been extended, while fees for issuing resident documents are being waived. Updates on system restoration will be announced through major portals and press releases as service resume. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, a senior North Korean diplomat has said Pyongyang will never give up its nuclear program in a rare address to the United Nations. The comments come as the United States maintains its policy of complete denuclearization of North Korea. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
A senior North Korean diplomat has reaffirmed that Pyongyang will never give up its nuclear weapon, calling it a sacred and untouchable cornerstone of its sovereignty. Vice Foreign Minister Kim Sung-kyung delivered the remarks on Monday at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. It was the first time a high-ranking North Korean official had spoken from the assembly podium since 2018. Kim declared that the nuclear arsenal is enshrined in both North Korea's law and the Constitution, describing it as an absolute asset that guarantees survival. He also argued that calls for denuclearization amount to demanding that North Korea surrender its sovereignty and right to exist.
We will never give up nuclear power, which is our state law, national policy, and sovereign power, as well as the right to existence. Under any circumstances, we will never walk away from this position.
The speech came as the U.S. maintains its policy of complete denuclearization of North Korea. Washington has left the door open for talks with the regime, and leader Kim Jong-un has previously signaled conditional openness to dialogue. Still, the vice minister rejected any scenario where the nuclear program would be abandoned. Kim also criticized joint military exercises between the U.S. and South Korea and trilateral drills with Japan, describing them as real war simulations aimed at the North. He framed these activities as justification for Pyongyang's nuclear stance. However, the diplomat also hinted at openness to engagement. He said North Korea is willing to expand cooperation with countries that treat it with respect and pursue friendly relations, regardless of differences in political systems. The speech comes as both Seoul and Washington say they hope to re-engage Pyongyang in talks aimed at reducing tensions and advancing peace on the Korean peninsula. There's also speculation that President Donald Trump could seek to revive direct dialogue with Kim Jong-un during his upcoming visit to South Korea for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit at the end of October. 이승재, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung is set to hold a summit with Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba in the southeastern city of Busan today. The two leaders are expected to discuss bolstering cooperation on tackling population decline and revitalizing regions outside their respective capitals, as well as on AI and hydrogen energy. Ishiba's return visit to Korea is part of the two countries' so-called shuttle diplomacy following his trip to Tokyo last month. Ishiba is on a two-day visit to South Korea, which is his first and the last visit as prime minister, as Japan's Liberal Democratic Party is set to elect a new leader this weekend. So, as we just heard, a senior North Korean diplomat gave a rare address at the United Nations and said the North will never give up its nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba will be visiting South Korea today for his final trip before he steps down. For more on this, we're joined today by Dr. Joel Atkinson, professor at the Graduate School of International and Area Studies at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Dr. Atkinson, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, good morning. It's nice to be with you.
So this was the first time in 7 years that North Korea sent their senior official to deliver a speech at the United Nations in New York. What's your take on his UN speech?
Yeah, well, as a vice foreign minister, Kim Song-kyung is, relatively low level. For example, the president delivered South Korea's speech, but still, as you said, this is a significant shift. I think the speech does two main things. The first is list the concessions that Pyongyang wants the US to make, recognition of its nuclear status, the end of military exercises with South Korea, and ultimately the end of the Korea-US alliance. And second, I think it opens the door for a kind of a reconciliation between North Korea and an increasingly China-centered United Nations. The speech recognizes the value of the UN and, this kind of idea that can do better in the future, presumably starting with how it operates in relation to North Korea's nuclear weapons.
You see, and while a North Korean diplomat is in New York, just recently North Korean and Chinese foreign ministers, they met in Beijing. Could this signal a possible resumption of dialogue between North Korea and the United States?
Well, obviously at some point they will talk, whether it's during the Trump administration or 10 years from now. So it really depends on how high of a bar each side will set in order to resume public dialogue. What Pyongyang is doing is building solidarity with China and Russia, with its friends at the UN, in order to pressure the US to make those concessions. That means Pyongyang is setting a high bar for the US to jump. Will Trump be willing to clear that bar, or will Kim be willing to lower it if Trump isn't? Well, we'll see.
Right, and President Lee Jae-myung will be meeting Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba today. This is their first time in more than two decades that the leaders of South Korea and Japan, they're holding a meeting in South Korea outside of Seoul. This will be Ishiba's last visit to Korea as Prime Minister before stepping down. What does this tell us about today's summit?
Yeah, well, I think selecting Busan reflects Lee Jae-myung's efforts at what is called, regional revitalization. And yes, even though he only became prime minister in October last year, Ishiba will not be in that role for much longer. So I would point to two things regarding the summit. One is they see signaling cooperation as important to create some diplomatic leverage, not only with US President Trump, but also with China and North Korea. And they want to cooperate economically to create some scale relative to those giants, China and the US. And second is this general perception that cooperation is going to be more difficult under the next Japanese PM. Ishiba wants to reciprocate Lee's August visit to Tokyo while he can. And I think both probably hope to lock in some of that cooperation that little bit more.
Let's see, what might be some of the issues that might be discussed when they meet in Busan today?
Well, they'll certainly be promoting what's called a future-oriented relationship. That means each side being a bit softer on historical issues. So far, both sides have been willing to do that to an extent. After the first summit, President Lee told journalists that it was just the first spoonful, and you shouldn't expect to be full after having a first bite, or you'll end up with indigestion. So now this is a chance for another bite, but it's unlikely that Ishiba will be able to offer too much, lest it provoke a backlash in Japan and set back that momentum. I expect President Lee will ask for support for his efforts to encourage Washington to talk to Pyongyang, and I expect Ishiba may want the South Korean side to re-emphasize that it won't be leaning in China's favor at the expense of Japan and the US over Taiwan and so on.
Right, and the next major diplomatic gathering will be the APEC leaders meeting here in Gyeongju, with both Donald Trump and Xi Jinping expected to attend the event. What's your take on the possibility of a meeting here in South Korea between the leaders of the world's two largest economies?
Well, if they both come, they will presumably meet. I think we shouldn't read too much into it, since they will be here for APEC, not to meet with each other. I think a bigger sign would be Trump going to Beijing. And I think, it's very hard to tell what's going on behind the scenes, but there's some signs they may be getting closer to some kind of deal on tariffs, etc. We won't know until we find out. And overall, the background, I think, is a kind of an increasing tension and conflict between China and the United States. So whatever happens here in Gyeongju is not, I don't think, is going to really get us into some different trajectory.
I see. All right, Dr. Atkinson, thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. My pleasure.
In other news, the command ship of the U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet, USS Blue Ridge, visited Busan port for the first time in more than 5 years. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung was invited to take a look at the ship and hear from its captain of the experience of taking part in recent trilateral drills between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo.
Docked in the port city of Busan is a rare view of a ship, the USS Blue Ridge, the command ship for the U.S. 7th Fleet since 1979. Commissioned in 1970, the ship operates out of its home port at Yokosuka, Japan, overseeing waters around the Korean Peninsula as well as parts of the Western Pacific and the Indian Ocean. Flying the first Navy Jack flag, symbolizing the oldest active-duty U.S. Navy ship, this 19,600-ton ship has been fully deployed for her entire life, not once entering American waters other than Guam. A handful of reporters who were invited onto the ship to mark its first visit to Busan in more than 5 years were able to witness the ship bearing the marks of time but still boasting of formidable presence.
I'm currently standing on the helipad of the USS Blue Ridge next to a MH-60 Sierra helicopter used for search and rescue missions. This helicopter actually participated in the recent Freedom Edge exercise.
Through the Freedom Edge training, we strengthened our joint maritime operational skills. The port call also provided an opportunity for enhanced cooperation among our joint operations command teams, further improving our joint operational capabilities.
Calling the ROC-US alliance a phenomenal relationship and cornerstone of both peace and stability in Northeast Asia, the commanding officer underlined that the recent joint exercise was more than just a drill.
These exercises have forged unbreakable ties, and the bonds are a commitment to our allies and other countries to ensure an open and free Indo-Pacific. One of the things that I will never forget during my career is looking behind and seeing the flags waving of both the Republic of Korean Navy and the Japanese with the U.S. flag as well.
USS Blue Ridge is soon to set sail from Busan port, but two navies' willingness to strengthen their joint defense posture can be seen through such visits. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News, Busan.
Shifting gears, U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have agreed to move forward with the U.S. leader's Gaza peace plan, raising hopes of ending nearly 2 years of war between Hamas and Israel. During a White House press conference on Monday, Trump said that if Hamas accepts the deal, all hostages must be released within 72 hours. The Israeli Prime Minister has already endorsed the plan, but the international community is now watching closely to see whether Hamas will agree. Both Trump and Netanyahu warned of sharp consequences if the militant turns down the proposal. The announcement comes as Trump unveils his 20-point ceasefire plan, which includes full aid immediately being sent into the Gaza Strip upon agreement. Starting this week, South Korea is looking to host more Chinese tourists with a visa-free scheme that will run until next June as a test, and businesses are already slowly warming up. Our Kim Do-yeon tells us more.
As announced in August, on Monday, Chinese tourists in pre-booked groups of 3 or more enter South Korea without a visa. They're able to stay for up to 15 days with this scheme running until June 30th of next year. This is expected to increase Chinese tourists visiting South Korea with levels already on the path to recovery to pre-COVID times. And for those who missed this chance and already entered South Korea, it's an easy way back into the country.
Although I came too early this time and had to get a visa, I definitely will visit more often now because of visa-free program. I had to spend time and money. The food is excellent and the shopping environment is also very good.
More tourists, however, doesn't automatically equate to additional profit. It also equates to fierce competition. For duty-free stores in Korea, it's time to put up their best possible promotions and presents. This favorite K-food bundle pack comes in this bag with the word fortune written in Korean and Chinese on it. It's also red, a lucky color in Chinese culture. Promotions like this kicked off on Monday across the major players in light of the visa-free program. The duty-free stores are now raising their expected number of visitors.
We attracted a cumulative total of 80,000 visitors through August. With the visa-free policy now boosting group tours, we are targeting 140 visitors by the end of the year. To accommodate this, we are renovating our shopping spaces and enhancing experiential content so that customers leave with pleasant memories, not just products.
That optimism is spilling out onto the streets. Here in Myeongdong, stores are also competing to get the best out of the opportunity. And it's not just Korean local stores. Chinese payment system companies like Alipay and UnionPay are working to host more visitors with gifts prepared for those who use their service.
With the visa-free program, our company is hosting events here in Myeongdong. I hope everyone can have a good time and make good memories.
The government is expecting 1 million visitors from China by the first half of next year through this program. In addition, October is a typically popular month for Chinese tourists as it has China's national holiday in it. Last year, the number of Chinese tourists recovered to around 70% of pre-COVID levels. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and today is my final World Now. U.S. President Donald Trump unveiled a plan to put a tariff of 100% on all films produced outside the United States, following an earlier threat in May. Details on when or how the tariffs could be enacted have not been specified. On Monday local time, Trump posted on social media that every movie made outside of the United States will face a 100% import duty, accusing other countries of having stolen America's film business, just like stealing candy from a baby. He singled out California and the state's governor, calling them weak and incompetent in managing the industry. Industry observers raised immediate concerns following the announcement, as films are often co-produced internationally. While the latest tariff threat is not new, with Trump mentioning the idea once in May, the recent announcement carries renewed weight as the administration claims it is actively moving toward implementation. In Europe, Moldova's ruling pro-European party has secured a parliamentary majority in Sunday's elections, reaffirming the country's push toward the European Union. With over 99% of the ballots counted on early Monday, Moldova's Party of Action and Solidarity, led by President Maia Sandu, captured approximately 50% of the vote, winning about 55 out of 101 seats in parliament. That gives the party the rare ability to govern without forming a coalition. The Patriotic Electoral Bloc, a Moscow-leaning alliance headed by the country's former president, trailed far behind with a little over 24% of the vote and a weaker showing than expected. EU leaders welcomed the result and praised Moldova for the peaceful conduct of the election. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky praised the result, saying that destabilizing activity from Moscow had failed to sway the people. In Madagascar, President Andry Rajoelina said on Monday that he will dissolve the government following days of youth protests. Thousands of young people have been protesting since Thursday, demanding reliable water and electricity amid nationwide frustration over prolonged power outages. Security forces responded with tear gas, and guards cleared barricades made of rocks and telephone poles. According to the United Nations, at least 22 people have been killed and more than 100 injured. Protesters have also called for the resignation of Madagascar's prime minister and president, accusing them of governance failures. Finally, Puerto Rican superstar Bad Bunny has been officially confirmed as the headliner for the Super Bowl 60 halftime show, set for February 8, 2026 in Santa Clara, California. The NFL announced the three-time Grammy-winning artist will perform at the event during halftime of Sunday Night Football. Bunny said in a statement that the moment goes beyond myself. He also dedicated the performance to his people, culture, and history.
It's getting quite chilly in the mornings and evenings now, but afternoon temperatures will continue to top around 25 degrees Celsius during the day, making it feel a little warm. So do dress accordingly for a large temperature swing. Skies will be fairly clear with some showers. However, there could be passing rain in central areas in Gyeongsang-Pukto province with less than 5 millimeters in the forecast. And this afternoon, top temperatures will rise to similar levels to yesterday. yesterday. Seoul, Daejeon, Gwangju will be getting up to 25 degrees. Daegu, Gyeongju, Jeju will be warmer at 26 degrees. October starts on a sunny note, but the long Chuseok holiday starts with rain in southern regions and east of Gangwon-do province. Meanwhile, the temperature difference will remain significant in inland areas for the time being, so please do dress in layers.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.